So I used to work at a video store from 1997 to 1999, back when you were in elementary school. This is kind of I think for people that kind of worked in the 90s, a little bit early 2000 at the video store, this is kind of a little bit of a nostalgia piece, but there's a little bit more to it than just videotape to this.
Yeah. Have you ever deleted a bunch of tapes at the video store?
No, but I had the magnetic swipe for stealing them. Script.
Oh, okay.
So you could probably just pluck them out the stuff and off you go.
There you go. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about a film that teaches you one of the most important things as far as video rental goes in the 90s. That's Be Kind and Rewind. All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hi, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing your support of the show. You can keep the conversation by liking and subscribing. You also we do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals to tell us what movies we could talk about in the future, as well as we got a bunch of new content as well. We just uploaded some more content for our Patreon followers. Both Kyle and I are members for the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critic reviews as well as ours. And today we're kind of going to talk about, I don't know, a little bit of forgotten film from 2008.
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's Be Kind, Rewind.
When Elroy Fletcher leaves his VHS rental business in the hands of his foster son, Mike, after a series of odd happenings, Mike and his friend find that all the VHS tapes have been erased. The two men take it upon themselves to remake all the movies in the store in order to keep that business open.
This is directed by Gordy, right?
Michel Gondry.
Gondry. He directed Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. He's also the co-writer from that movie as well, I believe. Previous to that, he did a bunch of music videos. And I think that kind of from that back history, and I think he was in a band also, if I remember right. I think that template of music and, you know, before you do film, as well as cutting music videos, still plays a part of him when he makes movies. And I try to think about, like, if he makes a movie, I think he's also thinking about the steps, procedures, and mechanics. Of course, you do as a filmmaker without it, but with music as your background, this almost plays like a music video.
It's funny that so many directors, that the ones who have come from music videos and really made a name for themselves,
like David Fincher,
Spike Jonze, it's that style of whatever music videos they made has influenced them immensely. I mean, we've looked at the current Best Director winners, the Daniels, who directed Turned Down for What, which is one of the most gonzo music videos I've ever seen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then you see the movie, but you see how they could gone from that music video to that film. I can see the same thing here with Michel Gondry, who I think did that one music video. I can't remember the band who was in it, but it was the one where they had the Lego figures doing the actual like music video. Right. And you can see how that would translate to something like this.
So he almost plays on this balance where it's serious tone, but it's a little bit schmaltzy at the same time. Spotless Mind had this.
Yeah.
Where it's a lot of dark themes and serious tones to it, but also once in a while it gives a nudge like, hey, just remind you, it's still kind of just this movie.
Yeah, and this was my entry point, actually, to Michel Gondry, because unlike most other people, one of the only times it's ever happened, I watched the first hour of Eternal Sunshine and shut it off and brought it back to the video store.
Okay.
I could not stand it. I hated it so much. And apparently, I was in the minority there, because as soon as I got to college and everyone talked about their favorite films, it was Eternal Sunshine. I finally went back to it now, I think 2 years ago, and watched it with my wife on Valentine's Day of all days, and ended up loving the movie. But this was my entry point, was Be Kind, Rewind, because it was Jack Black, who was very popular in the late 2000s, and it was a video rental store, which is what I always wanted in my life.
Yeah. So in between, with Jack Black's career, this is between School Rock and High Fidelity. I think is kind of came out with High Fidelity.
Yeah.
He's been doing a bunch of other movies before that. I think he was in the Tim Burton movie, which is Mars Attacks.
Mars Attacks.
He was in that.
Wonderful Mars Attacks. And of course,
he had a great death in that movie.
Yeah, and his big scene-stealing, performance facing off against a giant monkey in the King Kong remake. Like, he'd kind of done this wide swath of films.
And then he does a remake of King Kong in this one.
Yeah, he gets to remake something he will also remake. So,
and this is the whole part of, I think, the aesthetic of Gandhi's point of recycling material, but also, the farceness of it is kind of ridiculous, because the whole point of the movie, it doesn't make any linear sense, but you understand the template of the story.
Yeah, it's more of an emotional, tonal kind of a journey than it is really plot. Like, the plot is a very loose, like, first 30 minutes that kind of sets up the we erased all the videotapes plot. and then it kind of becomes this other beast entirely. The film almost like reboots itself after 30 minutes and starts becoming a different story that's just using those templates.
And so I think throughout his whole aesthetic, he understands it's very much not so much surrealism as David Lynch would kind of, but understand that we're in guidelines of movies. That time is kind of elusive.
Yeah.
Some things can take place during the day, and all of a sudden the same conversation is night out.
Mm-hmm.
And you totally buy it. It could be an editing mistake. He doesn't care.
Yeah, and Gondry has this sense about him where you feel like he's showing off, but you don't care because he's having fun. You know, like the thing where Jack Black enters the video store when he's magnetized, and the movie itself ripples. Yes. Even though I'm watching it on a DVD, it ripples, and it's like that he's having fun with. Those brilliant faux one-shot takes where they move from film to film as they're doing it. You can tell that it's not real. It's not really happening in one shot, but he's having so much fun with it that you forgive a lot of that.
And so when you have a template for a story like this, you get to be a little more exploratory.
Yep.
As well as you get to be apologetic to a lot of the funness to it. Obviously, they're remaking movies because they lost the original content. They know they're eventually going to be in trouble, but they pull George Costanza. Was that wrong?
Yeah.
Whoa, we did that wrong? What are you doing? Yeah.
Well, there's almost like a childlike wonder to what they're doing. Yeah. I saw a great Letterboxd review pointing out that the film was... It makes more sense if you consider that all these characters are half their actual age intellectually, and you kind of makes more sense than like it's like a 12-year-old and a 25-year-old.
Right, because there's almost a sense of innocence to it throughout the process. There's nothing, even though like I said, there's serious tone to it, but there's also a little bit of innocent of enjoying making a movie when you're not really making a movie, but you're making your point of view of the movie that you like.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, this is very much like a translation almost of if the character that Jack Black played in High Fidelity just happened to work in a video store next. Because he is kind of playing the same kind of person.
It's almost like it's the same block down there.
He just got fired and then he went over here, Yeah. But then we have Danny Glover playing Mr. Fletcher. It's nice to see an actor who's got the gravitas and the weight that he carries around with film, supporting a smaller production.
It's one of my funniest moments of making him reenact Driving Miss Daisy.
Oh yeah,
especially
especially following up on the incredibly foolish Jack Black and Most Def version of it that they did earlier in the film.
My gosh, I mean, yeah, I can understand Danny Glover.
That had to have been fun though, him doing that role and then having Mia Farrow play the old white woman there too, and I think that's just kind of like. That would be a fun movie to make, regardless of what you think of the finished product. It would be a fun movie to be a part of.
Right, because it doesn't get serious until Sigourney Weaver shows up.
Yeah.
In this perfect costume of somebody who's taking herself... Because everybody's having fun with this.
Yeah.
And then she comes in drab, almost like X-Files.
Yeah, and she speaks literally to the audience where she goes, oh yeah, we're the bad guys. Yeah, you are, I guess, because what they're doing isn't all that harmless, is it?
They'll bring she's almost the tone... brings down the tone a little bit, like, oh, it's almost like the kids got in trouble, here comes the parent.
Yeah, the film does take a more dramatic tone, not really dramatic, but it adds in that dramatic tone that persists through the rest of the narrative to a very kind of sad and melancholic ending.
Yeah, and I think at the core of this also is talking about the backstage, that's why I would bring up his music background. He's talking about somebody who's not really celebrated and recognized in music history is Fats Waller. Which is another thing of bringing out of a different way of not instead of doing a documentary about him of serious tone, that you do this movie and you actually it's more about Fats Waller than any VHS tapes.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, and we get watching this film again. I hadn't seen it in at least 10 years. Watching it again, I had kind of like forgotten how the Fats Waller thing had anything to do with the narrative. Going back through the film, like, why is that so important again? I can't recall. I can't really put my finger on it. And getting to see the film kind of play out and become its own thing there at the end.
Yeah, because it's interesting because you could look up how he had his credits for everything, but it doesn't get really celebrated. A lot of people don't know who he is. Yeah. But I think if you know music and you know jazz and blues, you would definitely know who Fats Waller was.
Yeah, it's ironic that there are people that were asking after the fact, like, is that a real guy? Or is that, because it's done in such a fanciful way that you could almost think that it's just a made-up character for the film, And in fact, most of the people make up things about him, so...
Yeah, it's almost like, is that a real person just making up for the movie's purpose?
Yeah.
And you think something that's trying to be nostalgic about VHS tapes, they use somebody at a core of movie making. Somebody like, do like Sam Fuller or something like that, or a director, but instead it's a musician.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is interesting kind of a spin take on that. So, yeah. Up next, of course, is our review. God, I couldn't talk today. Of Be Kind.
Rewind. Now, had you seen this film before, Nick?
Yes, and for me at the time of my first impression, it was hard to digest because I didn't necessarily, I knew what I was getting into, and I just don't, you have to have the right setting for this.
Yeah.
And I think if you go into it think it's going to be a kind of the same kind of DNA of Spotless Mind, or it's going to be something like High Fidelity, then you're missing the point of it.
It doesn't have the intermental nature that Charlie Kaufman's writing brings to it. But you can see the same kind of DNA, in Michel Gondry's like co-writing in that film through this one. And then of course, Gondry had done The Science of Sleep. My wife, when I first, started dating her, she told me, you got to see this movie I watched called Human Nature, that she had always watched on IFC. Apparently that was a Michel Gondry film. She had no idea that these two films were related in any way, but it was kind of that funny thing where when you see the films and you know it's him, you can kind of see that DNA. And the same thing comes through with The Green Hornet. The probably the biggest budget film that Gondry had done with Seth Rogen. You can see the DNA of that film here as well.
Right, because you think in Green Hornet we're going to get a Marvel movie out of that.
Yeah, and instead it kind of becomes its own self-aware. We're going to make fun of the fact that the Green Hornet himself isn't actually capable of doing anything, and then it's all his sidekick. And like there's that put together comedy that comes with it.
And so I think especially for a review, people like to review it for what they want it to be. Mm-hmm. Rather than what it is, and it's a celebration of enjoying film.
Yep.
And I think that as well as recognizing all descendants, people can actually appreciate a film of different genres, of different things, no matter how you present it.
Yep.
It can be on disc, it can be VHS, be commercial, as well as independent home movies.
Yeah.
And so you think like in a comedy, the big bad commercial store is going to be the evil one. It really isn't.
No, in fact, they play a pretty sizable role at the end of the film in supporting their fellow, artists. Yeah, I see the film as very much a touch on, make your project. Whatever it's a movie, it's a song, make your thing. Go out and do it. We all have something creative to us. I'm not much of a painter, but I have painted. It makes me feel good to paint. None of my paintings will ever win awards or sell things, but I do like the idea. There are certain elements to the creative process that whether or not they make one person happy is irrelevant if they can capture somebody. And I think it's playing off that, but I also think it's kind of asking a question about like our comfortability around remakes. Whether or not we're comfortable with people remaking our films, because obviously all the movies that they make in this are not better than the original versions, but they are to the people involved.
No, from that little echo chamber that they live in.
Yeah.
They appreciate because it's their authentic what they're doing.
Yeah.
Rather than seeing some other product from their own way land coming here and making a movie. But right, I think it's more about do your own project. Mm-hmm. And also I think it's a lot about transitioning. So you're talking about people renovating, get rid of the building, as well as transitioning. I'm giving you the keys to the shop and you're erecting it. But also from VHS to DVD to now you can just get it on your phone. It's how you handle the transitions. But through transitions, we're all going to react to movies the same way.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, I'm always critical of the streaming world because I worry about the loss of physical media. Because I do think, we talked about this with a number of films where we want to talk about it on the show.
We can't find it.
We have to find it. We have to go buy like a $50 DVD somewhere that's low quality. Or you had to get Netflix DVD to send you one like 2 years ago, so then drop it around a bunch so we could all watch it. It's like...
Side note, if you can find a copy of Smilla's Sense of Snow, please give it to us.
he's mentioned this since
season 2. Ever since the video store we used to work at shut down, I can't find it. I don't think it's on DVD. I think it's on VHS, and I can't.
But that's the thing is, like, there are movies that I have purchased films purely because they're back in print and they may disappear again. The Devils is one that has never been on home video.
City Industry, I would love to find a copy.
What's that? The Catherine Bigelow film, Vampires, Near Dark. Near Dark only shows up once a year on Shudder for a month and then it's gone again. Yeah, and it's like I worry about that, but at the same time, I tend to forget the importance of streaming has made it infinitely easier to watch so many more movies. I don't have to ride my bike to the video store, rent a bunch of movies, spend money. You can go on to Tubi and watch them for free. You can watch movies on YouTube for free, some of them. Amazon's got all these free sources to watch tons of classic movies and new stuff.
And of course, when I worked at a video store, I missed my customers.
That's maybe that's the loss.
They would just come in and you could just BS movies with a person that outside the store, a complete stranger to you, but all of a sudden you're just arguing favorite Bruce Willis movies.
Yeah, nobody goes into a video store who's not a fan of movies in some form. You know.
Yeah, and then which Nick Cage movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, check out our Patreon for our top 3 Nick Cage movies. But
right, and I have to say I was hesitant to watch this movie because it's like whatever. I forgot this is one that make their own movies, but there is a certain element of appreciation of the movie experience.
Yeah.
Of making your own movies. We just reviewed The Bad and the Beautiful. It talks about the ugliness of.
That's true. I didn't think about these two movies.
But now this is almost a childish celebration of movies, and the grown-ups take it away from them.
Yeah, that's true. I find this movie to be a sweet film, to be a tender film. I use the term adorable to talk about this movie. That's not to say that the film is perfect in any way. I think the first half hour with the whole clunkiness of how do we erase these videotapes, I don't think that works very well.
Or in the whole conspiracy, Jack Black is a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
His character is.
I don't think that whole portion really works all that well. Once the videotapes are deleted, though, and they have to figure stuff out,
right. First
I could watch 2-3 hours of them just remaking movies because it's just the joy on their faces.
And that's the danger of it. The first act is the slowest part of the movie.
Yeah, it's the part that really needs that upward momentum that doesn't really get it. Yeah. But once the narrative gets going, I think a lot of it is so enjoyable. So it's I think a fantastic second and third act, a not great first act, which is going to drag people down. And unfortunately, given the nature of streaming, if you are streaming this movie online, you are more likely to turn it off because you don't have the financial investment. Okay. So I would beg you, watch the first half hour and then keep going.
I have one last question. If you know the answer, I don't know if Kyle does too. Did they make a copy of this on VHS?
I don't think so.
I would. You made a great deal. You made. Hey, if I was on the sales, I would totally make copies.
That's the thing is that's the end of VHS. Nowadays they're doing that. The VHS movies are being released on VHS. They're getting that kind of time in the sun. It's almost like we needed that time to get there.
I don't ever want to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark with that scratchy thing in the middle for it that I had to do so many times. So.
Fair enough.
Have you seen?
Be Kind, Rewind.
Yeah. You better have when you came to my store.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and one thing I want to ask our viewers actually today is, what would be the one film that you would have sweeted? What would be the one movie you would like to see these random characters remake for you? Let us know down in the comments section below. Maybe it's a 4-hour movie that you just want to see a 20-minute cut of. I don't know.
Air Force One.
Part of me wanted to say Boogie Nights, and then they did it in the movie. So,
yeah.
I would like to see something wacky like a Muppet film sweeted by them, where they actually have to make their own Muppets to do it. I would like to see that. But let us know down in the comment section what film you would see sweeted.
Put it in the comments on the book. Yes, do it.
Yeah, and then while you're down there, please like and subscribe.
No
we do
kidding.
appreciate it. It helps to support the channel, and you never miss new episodes as they drop. Thank you once again
Tell
for
your
joining
friends
us.
about the show.
Yeah. Share us. Like us. Do all those things. Yeah. And find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my show, The St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts. And once again, please rewind your VHS tapes.